How's it going, everyone? Behavior just gave us the details on all of the gameplay and perk changes coming to Dead by Daylight. So in this video, I'm going to quickly explain the future outcome of every perk, how often it's going to be used, how it's going to be used, if it's going to be abused, is it a negative or positive change, and how will it affect the overall health of the game. In addition to that, you may have recently seen my perk rework prediction video. For fun, we'll also be comparing my changes to perks versus behaviors changes to see who may have done it better. Of course, there's no bias on my end or anything like that. Okay, so before we can really reliably jump into any of the perk changes, we have to first talk about the gameplay updates so that these changes have a little bit more context to them. The first is generator speeds. So generator speeds have been increased from a solo survivor taking 80 seconds to complete a generator up to 90 seconds. So every generator is going to take 10 seconds longer to complete. On top of that, kicking a generator will now instantly remove 2.5% of the maximum progress. So there's a little bit more of an incentive to kick a generator. On top of that, a lot of the break action speeds have been changed, so now you break walls and pallets slightly faster, and that adds an extra reason to kick generators as well. On top of that, they added a little bit of save the best for last into the base game, so now you recover faster by 10% when you're hitting a survivor. That translates to 0.3 seconds. I'm curious to see what kind of difference that feels like. And also what save the best for last feels like on top of that. So that's a little bit of a change to save the best for last, and as well as brutal strength. And on top of that, the survivor speed boost upon being hit has also been reduced by 10%. Now 1.8 seconds instead of 2 seconds. So a little bit less of a shift W after you take a hit. On top of that, they increase how fast you gain bloodlust tier 2 and tier 3. So tier 1 still works the same exact way, so it's not like you should be incentivized to use bloodlust. It's just that tier 2 and tier 3 were only really used in spots where the survivor was most likely abusing a badly designed loop on a map, like a god window or something. So they put this in there so that you can get a hit at one of those god windows. And if a killer goes out of their way to get bloodlust 3 at a loop that isn't broken, that means they're probably not a great killer anyway. It shouldn't have much of an effect on the match because it's going to take them 45 seconds to get one hit, which is not ideal. You're not going to be winning against decent survivors if you take that long to bloodlust one hit. Alright, so they wanted to make some updates as well to address camping and tunneling. There's a 5-second borrowed time built into the game. On top of that, the unhooked survivors will now have a 7% haste status effect for 5 seconds, which will make them harder to catch and encourages killers to shift focus to the unhooking survivor. Both effects will be cancelled prematurely if the unhooked survivor performs what we now call a conspicuous action. These are interactions other than being chased that would improve your chances of survival. This includes repairing a generator, healing yourself or others, cleansing or blessing a totem, sabotaging a hook, unhooking others, or opening an exit gate. Opening an exit gate is a new one, by the way. Before, you could open an exit gate with Decisive Strike on, and it wouldn't take Decisive Strike away from you or anything like that, so that's a change. With these base changes, we hope survivors can switch up their perk loadouts without fear that camping and tunneling will cut their next match short. Well, that's going to be kind of up to the perk changes. Nothing here is like so dramatic that it's going to automatically make camping or tunneling not a thing, so I'm curious to see where they went with the rest of the changes. Starting with BBQ and Chili. This perk is incredibly popular not because it's particularly powerful, but because of the huge amount of blood points it provides. Choosing to go into a match without it massively slows your progression. Very true. We do not want blood points to be the driving factor behind perk choices, so we will be removing the blood point bonus. While we understand this change may seem shocking, please keep in mind that this update reduces the grind about 75%, with the matchmaking incentives providing an additional avenue for blood points. We believe this is a necessary step in making aura reading perks more appealing, as blood point gain will no longer be the deciding factor. And I didn't really go into that because I'm sure there's a bunch of other videos that are going to do it, but just real quick, they have reduced the grind by 75% through working with prestiges, and it's all going to work even if you haven't been prestiging. It's going to count how many blood points you put in and all that good stuff, so it sounds like a really awesome change. And I like this because now you just don't have to use BBQ and Chili anymore for the blood points, and you're free to have a perk slot to do more interesting builds with. To some people, that's going to translate as extra slowdown, but to a lot of other people like myself, that just means we have more freedom to create fun builds without feeling punished or feeling like we're wasting a survivor pudding or wasting a bloody party streamers because we're using it without BBQ and Chili. That's a very simple change to BBQ and Chili. My version of changing barbecue and chili was a bit ridiculous, I'll be honest. I changed it to a Scourge hook, and I made it to where when a survivor is hooked on a Scourge hook, you see the aura of survivors further than 40 meters from the hook and gain a 5% haste status effect for 10 seconds. So ultimately, I think behavior went the better route, just making it a real simple change, keeping barbecue what it is without the blood points. Still a great perk and a better idea than what I had. Hex Ruin. A massive part of Hex Ruin's appeal is not having to stop and kick generators, as well as the ability to passively regress them from a distance. These aspects make Ruin a unique slowdown perk, so we are not looking to change them. To bring Hex Ruin in line with other perks, we are reducing the regression speed to 100% from 200%. This will reduce its power without destroying its primary appeal. After a survivor is killed, Hex Ruin will automatically deactivate. Alright, that last part's not really that important, but here's the thing. Hex Ruin is dead. Like, I can just read that and it's dead. 100% regression on a generator is like pretty close to nothing. It's pretty close to nothing. It's incredibly slow. And the issue with Hex Ruin was high mobility killers being annoying. That's basically what the issue with Hex Ruin was. Like someone like Blight and having like Tinkerer constantly going between generators and just constantly pushing you off, and it got really old and really obnoxious. So my change to Hex Ruin was when there are no killers within a 16-meter radius of the killer's base movement speed is increased by 20%. And the reason I did that is because the thing that I really liked about Hex Ruin is that it gave low mobility killers a chance to make up for their low mobility. And I think that's the key aspect, right? Because you have so many huge maps in this game. Like, what is Clown supposed to do if all of the survivors on Area of the Crows are across the map from where they just got their down? They can't use Pop Goes the Weasel. You know, by the time they walk over there, it's already gone. This change to Ruin that they made, it still only ever has a possibility of being effective on a high mobility killer who just doesn't want to stop to deal with generators. I think Ruin is dead. I really don't think you'll ever see it again unless whoever's using it just has nothing better to use. I think that's the only really explanation for why it would be used at this point. Depending on what maybe they do to the other perks. I mean, we'll see. But on this one, I give a point to myself. Pop Goes the Weasel. Pop Goes the Weasel gives killers a controlled way to remove significant progress from a generator of their choosing. Given that kicking a generator now removes 2.5% of its progress by default, we decided to tone down some numbers to compensate. This perk will now remove 20% of the generator's current, not total progress. This change will make Pop Goes the Weasel very effective against generators that are nearly done, but weaker against those with a small amount of progress. This is a bit similar to my change in a way, but at the same time, I gotta be honest, this sounds like a little bit of a buff to Pop Goes the Weasel. Like, before you would kind of just waste it sometimes on generators that were like 20% done, but now there's going to be virtually no reason to do that. So you're only going to be holding it for generators that are closer to being done, and you're going to do massive damage to those generators when you kick them. So I don't think that this is going to remove Pop Goes the Weasel from the meta at all. In fact, with the nerf to Ruin, I'd say that it's probably going to make Pop Goes the Weasel even more appealing than it already was. And not to mention that the generators now go up to 90 seconds instead of 80 seconds, so you're going to be even doing more damage. Yeah, so a nice Pop Goes the Weasel buff. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. It's a perk that rewards the killer for not camping and not tunneling. So on one hand, yeah, it's still meta. It might even be more meta than it was. On the other hand, it's still a healthy perk. For Pop Goes the Weasel, I'm just going to give it a draw. I don't think behavior did it better, and I don't think I did it better. I think either one of these could have worked just fine. Corrupt Intervention. This perk makes the beginning of a match more manageable, forcing survivors to extend deeper into the map before repairing a generator. We aren't looking to change this aspect. Moving forward, this perk will deactivate once a survivor enters the dying state. We believe this change will keep Corrupt Intervention effective in helping the killer build early game pressure while providing a limit to its power. In my opinion, going off of high MMR matches, Corrupt Intervention is exactly the same perk as it is now. And the reason why is because survivors are going to move to further away generators when the match starts. They're not going to wait for one of their teammates to get downed. So they're going to move to further away generators, and they're not going to abandon their further away generators to go to the other generators that were blocked if you get it down. It's just not going to happen. So it's exactly the same perk as it is now, with the one difference being that in lower MMR matches where survivors get down incredibly faster and they're a little bit stealthier and not as aggressive on generators, it's a bit of a nerf in that sense. Now, my version 2 Corrupt Intervention was a complete rework of the perk, which blocked all the totems from being interacted with for the first 5 minutes of the match. Now that I look back on it, I think that was a bit too much time. 5 minutes is quite a long time to have certain hex perks up. So I think I overtuned it. I'm going to be honest, I prefer the change behavior made to this perk, but I was trying to make this perk not as appealing. And the change that behavior made to the perk, it's still just as appealing as it ever was. It's still going to be 100% meta. You're not going to see killers not running Corrupt Intervention at IMMR. You're just not. It's still that good. So if the objective was to change the meta, I have to give a point to myself on this one, because this is not a change to the meta in any way, shape, or form. Tinkerer is a popular choice for the information it provides. Being able to prevent a generator from being powered is a game changer, particularly on killers with high mobility. It can, however, become a little oppressive when paired with certain regression perks. Therefore, Tinkerer can now only activate once per generator, but with these basic changes increased to 90, killers will have extra time to approach. So now it's a little bit like Merciless Storm in the sense that it can only activate once per generator, which is good because there are killers out there that are so annoying in how they just consistently break off of chase and go to every generator that's being activated with Tinkerer over and over and over again. And it's like, the match is like 3 minutes in, 4 minutes in, and nobody's completed a generator, nobody's been downed. It's just the killer annoying people. This isn't something you'll really notice if you play in a Swift or against Swifts, but if you're a solo queue player, you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. There are just these killers that never stop tinker whoring and going to generators, pushing you off gens, but not committing to a chase. So I think this is a healthy change. I went a completely different direction with my change to Tinkerer. I made it like the Lightborn for toolboxes, so it was a complete hard counter to using toolboxes on generators. This is a more stable change. I think Tinkerer is a cool idea for a perk in general, and this grounds it a little bit more. So good change. I'm going to give a point to behavior on this one. Oh god, here it is. NOED. This perk makes for a very effective comeback tool, though it falls out of favor in high skill games. That's true. We like the way NOED encourages survivors to preemptively cleanse totems, so we are not looking to weaken its direct strength. Instead, survivors will now see the Hex Totem's aura within 4 meters upon activation. This range increases to 24 meters over the course of 30 seconds. We believe this change will keep NOED a strong choice for endgame builds, while encouraging survivors to find the totem and attempt that last second save. I gotta be honest, I don't really think this is much of a change to NOED at high MMR, because I can't count how many times I've used NOED and I've gotten maybe 1 or 2 downs with it before it's immediately destroyed. So this is basically just streamlining what NOED already does, which is get destroyed after you get 1 or 2 downs with it at high MMR. That said, in lower MMR matches, this might be a healthy change. So I think it is well thought out in that way that it's not as oppressive. I think a lot of the people that complain about NOED are not, you know, the super high MMR Swift survivor players. It's either solo queue players or lower or mid-tier MMR players. And this should make NOED less oppressive for them, which is good because it's going to keep mid-tier killers from artificially boosting their way into higher MMR matches where they shouldn't be and getting wrecked by Swifts that are just addicted to efficiency. Now, my change to NOED was once the exit gates are powered, gain the following abilities. 6% movement speed increase for the remainder of the trial, and survivors could no longer leave the trial while in the dying state. I still think this is a really cool idea for a perk, but I'm fine with NOED still existing in its current form with just a slight nerf to it. So as far as a perk change goes, I'm going to give this point to behavior, although still like my idea for NOED, still think it would be a cool perk. Scourge Choke Pain Resonance, a really cool perk that is only overpowered in a sense if it's combined with Dead Man's Switch. Let's see what they did. The most recent addition to the meta, Pain Resonance, allows the killer to remove a sizable chunk from the most progressed generator simply by hooking a survivor. It's kind of weird that you guys worded it that way. I don't know why you say simply by hooking a survivor, but whatever. A loud noise notification allows the killer to disrupt the survivors before they can continue repairing. A jack of all trades of sorts, sort of like Dead Are, granting both a powerful regression effect and crucial information. With that in mind, you're removing the loud noise notification. Instead of exploding, the affected generator will now spark upon losing progress, and survivors will no longer scream. We believe this will ensure Pain Resonance remains a strong regression perk while limiting its informational aspect. I think that's fine. like, I don't think the information was really that needed. It was kind of just a cherry on top, so they got rid of the cherry, but the perk is still awesome, and it's still going to pair really well with Dead Man's Switch. Again, not really seeing so far any of the killer perks getting taken out of the meta. I think they're all gonna pretty much still be the same, which is a bit unfortunate. I think Ruin is really the only one you guys completely put down, but every other perk is still sounding really strong and really good. So we'll see. However, that said, I do like their version of Pain Resonance more than my own. Mine was kind of weird. It was like it transferred the progress from like one generator to another generator, and then, yeah, I think that's a bit too weird for DBD. So this change is smarter. Here it is, guys. Dead Hard. Holy shit. Dead Hard is by far the most used perk by survivors, and it's easy to see why. In the right hands, it acts like a third health state, allowing a survivor to escape a situation where they would otherwise go down. Very true and very annoying. There are two main ways Dead Hard is used: to dodge a hit and for distance to get a nearby pallet or window. Now, in the latter case, there's not much the killer can do. Therefore, Dead Hard will now provide the endurance status effect for 1 second when activated. If you time it right, you'll prevent the hit and gain a movement speed boost. This will remove Dead Harding for distance and make it solely used to dodge hits, which killers can anticipate and even bait accordingly. The first thing I want to address is that you guys said you're changing it because in the right hands it acts like a third health state, but you just basically, it's what, blah, blah. Like, this sentence could literally read, in the right hands it acts like a third health state, so we made it to where in the right hands it only acts as a third health state. That's what you did. Okay, just to be 100% clear, I know you didn't change the killer perks that much, but I just want to be clear on that. So there's always been two sides to the Dead Hard argument. Which is better, the distance or the invulnerability? And I was always on the side that I felt like the distance was less annoying if you removed the invulnerability aspect to it. But a lot of players, and I saw this in the comment section of my last video, believe that the distance is way more annoying than the invulnerability. Now, like I said, I disagree with that, and only time will really tell. We have to try this out. Survivors at first are not going to be used to this, so it's going to take them maybe a short little bit amount of time to really get the hang of it. But then I'm super afraid we're going to have a Medal of Man situation on our hands where every survivor you're hitting has the endurance status effect. To me, this has the same issue as old Dead Hard in the sense that you cannot lunge for a hit on a survivor ever. You're not allowed to do it unless you know they don't have Dead Hard, because lunging to hit a survivor is so unbelievably predictable that you're not allowed to do it. So you have to go right up behind them, and then you have this shoulder sniffing mini game where you have to decide, when am I gonna hit and when are they gonna hit dodge. If there's no telltale, like if the survivor doesn't highlight for a millisecond or something like that, this is gonna be pretty rough, guys. Like, I don't know, I don't think you can activate this like while you're climbing through a window, so you can like lunge in those situations, but the survivor would know that, so they would just not go through the window, and then they would get a speed boost on top of it, so it's like a mini buff at the same time. I don't like this change. I'll be 100% honest. I think this is going to be incredibly annoying and incredibly frustrating, possibly even more so than the current Dead Hard. My change to Dead Hard was that it kept the distance, but it got rid of the invulnerability completely. And when you use Dead Hard, you made the injuries worse on yourself and inflicted hemorrhage and mangled on yourself. I thought that was kind of nice caveat to using Dead Hard, so that even if you made up for, you know, getting downed, you would have to pay for it a little bit later on with a longer heal. I'm 100% going to give the point to myself on this one. Like I said, only time will tell. Maybe we don't really fully understand how this change is implemented, and maybe it's really easy to hit survivors from this point on. But as far as I can tell, this looks to be insanely strong. Obviously, they couldn't make everyone happy with this. Survivors are going to be outraged by this change, but killers are going to be outraged by this change. There was nothing they could do with Dead Hard that wasn't going to make people upset. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan. And one last thing that I would like to say to like survivor mains. I got nothing against survivor mains. I like playing survivor. Feels good to use Dead Hard to not go down. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, guys, this is one of the main reasons that tunneling and camping is so prevalent in DBD. Because if you have a perk this strong that keeps you from going down and it increases the length of your chase dramatically, yeah, it feels good. Your chase went on longer, but now you've basically put the killer in a situation where if they don't kill you, they're going to lose the game. So yeah, before you were just going to get downed and hooked. Now you have massively incentivized the killer to kill you, because they can't keep doing this. They can't keep having 3 health state chases. They have to get someone out of the game to account for the strength of perks like this. So I know that there's killers that will do it anyway, obviously, but this incentivized killers who otherwise wouldn't do it to do it. Plain and simple. Decisive Strike. One of Decisive Strike's main appeals is its efficiency at preventing tunneling. In light of the upcoming base game changes, we expect Decisive Strike to drop in usage slightly. Okay, that's reasonable. For the most part, we find that the perk is healthy for the game and easy for killers to avoid who choose not to tunnel an unhooked survivor. That said, at the end of the match, there's often nothing the killer can do to prevent a survivor with Decisive Strike from escaping. Moving forward, Decisive Strike will now deactivate once the exit gates are powered. In addition, the stun duration has been reduced from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. We'll also be simplifying the description of the perk. Decisive Strike will now be canceled by conspicuous actions, which now includes opening exit gates. So that's a pretty big nerf to Decisive Strike, honestly. Pretty big nerf, pretty big buff to tunneling. Let's be honest, it's a pretty big buff. One of the most horrific things about Decisive Strike is that when you get stunned, you are stunned. Like, you are knocked the hell out unconscious. And if the survivor wants, they can head on you on top of your Decisive Strike, which they're not going to be able to do anymore. The head-on into Decisive Strike play will no longer work, so that's gone out of the game. Let's hope that that Dead Hard change isn't as obnoxious as I think it's going to be, because if it is, tunneling is back on the menu, guys. And it is at the top. It's today's special. It's everyday special. Now, my change to Dead Hard was a little bit different. It kind of came with a price. So if you wanted to use Dead Hard earlier, then you should. Like, if you're not getting tunneled and you try to go out of your way to make the killer use Decisive Strike to waste their time, my version changed it to where you would be punished for that. My version also included that it would no longer work once the exit gates are powered, so that's the same. Ultimately, I think my version is more interesting and like still would allow for things like head-on plays into Decisive Strike and whatnot, which are one of the funny things that survivors can do. I think it's a bit sad that that's gone. Overall, I think my change to Decisive Strike was actually better than this version, but whatever. As a killer main, I'm liking this change, and that's usually not a good sign. As a killer main, I like this change to Decisive Strike, which should scare survivors. It makes tunneling easier. But we haven't seen all the perk changes yet. Let's keep going. Much like Decisive Strike, this perk gets much of its popularity by granting counterplay against a camping killer. Considering a lighter version of Borrowed Time's effect has been added to the Survivor's base kit, we need to update the perk accordingly. Borrowed Time will now extend the duration of the Endurance effect by 10 seconds and increase the movement speed bonus duration by 10 seconds for any survivor you unhook. These effects will be cancelled if the unhooked survivor performs a conspicuous action. While the overall duration with Borrowed Time is longer than before, we expect that having a lighter version in the base kit will cause the usage rates to drop. That's true, and there's another good caveat to this change, and that's that killers cannot just reliably wait out base Borrowed Time. They say they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, then bam, they whack the guy because they're trying to tunnel him, right? But now they don't know which version of Borrowed Time the survivor is going to have. They might have the weaker version or the stronger version, and they can't really reliably decide which one it's going to be, and they're going to have to kind of make a read on that. My change to Borrowed Time was insanity, so even though I think it was funny and really dynamic and whatnot, and I biasly like it more than this change because this change is not super interesting, I think that this change is fine. Like, it's totally has a place in the game, and it's going to affect killers, so still does its job. And I don't think there's any way that survivors could be upset about this change. Iron Will. The perk allows skilled players to mind game more effectively in areas by silencing grunts of pain. To a degree, yeah, but let's be honest, you get an insane amount of passive value out of Iron Will. I don't think that it has to make you a skilled player, but let's continue. To address its high usage rates, we are lowering the grunts of pain reduction to 75%. Additionally, Iron Will is no longer active when exhausted, though it will not cause exhaustion itself. Which was my change to this perk, was that I would have just made it an exhaustion perk. But their change is that it only gives you 75% effectiveness. And I don't have data on what exactly that's going to sound like, but the strength of Iron Will is that you made no noise. So the fact that you do make noise could potentially make this perk useless. And on top of that, this is a nice buff to Spirit. Like, Spirit's back. She doesn't even need Strider anymore. Iron Will's gone. So weird how things get balanced, right? But yeah, Iron Will might be dead. Like, it could legitimately be a dead perk now because it had one job, and I kind of recognized that in my perk change, that Iron Will's job is to make you 100% silent. If you're not 100% silent and you sound close to a no mither, perk's not going to do anything and nobody's going to bother running it. So I think I have to give it to myself on this one. I think that survivors would have preferred to have the real true Iron Will with an exhaustion effect, then they would have had a version like this that is just not effective, and in a weird way might actually make them easier to detect if they're playing against someone like Spirit who wants to hear how close you are, because now if she hears you, she's going to know you're right next to her, and that's a boom dead situation potentially. Survivors are not going to be happy about this change, and I understand why. Self-care, a perk that in my opinion didn't need to be changed, like it, because it was already really misunderstood. Like, it wasn't a good perk, people just used it, not really for any good reasons, right? So let's see what they did. Though self-care has a divisive reputation among the community, we were surprised to find that its usage peaks in the highest skill matches. Jesus. Having a consistent and reliable way to heal yourself is a powerful tool in the right hands. On top of that, self-care increases the efficiency of medkits, allowing survivors to squeeze additional heals out of them. That's true. To reduce its strength, self-care's heal speed will be lowered to 35% and the item efficiency bonus has been removed entirely. Okay, so I think it's fair to say that self-care is just about as dead as Ruin is. I think that Ruin, self-care are dead. Iron Will potentially dead as well, but yeah. I don't see any more self-care in the future. Now, my change to self-care was to make you immune to the deep wound health state and hemorrhage and mangled status effects. And I got so many comments about how that would be a buff to Legion because Legion could just hit you 5 times. And, you know, okay, a little bit true, but at the same time, don't act like the person's just going to be standing there AFK, okay? That would be 4 sprint bursts, and there would be like a meta game there with pallets and stuff. It wouldn't be that simple, okay guys, so calm down. Regardless of how it affected Legion, I still think my version was a better change to the perk. We'd have to see, but I think it's going to be completely useless. That's my prediction. Next up is Spine Chill, and I'm a little bit already triggered because I just don't like Spine Chill. I think it's an incredibly annoying perk to go against as killer. This perk excels at alerting survivors when a killer is approaching, and in high skill lobbies, the vault speed increase becomes the primary draw. Very true. There are a few aspects of this perk we would like to clean up. Spine Chill now only activates if the killer has a clear line of sight to the survivor. This will remove the awkward counterplay where the killer must look away to ensure a stealthy approach. Great change already. Next, we'll be adding a short, half-a-second lingering effect to Spine Chill. This will prevent the perk icon from flickering when the killer looks around and makes the action speed boosts more consistent. So a little mini buff there. Finally, we'll be removing the vault speed bonus entirely as it does not suit the perk's nature. Thank you. God, that's such an unnecessarily annoying aspect of this. And if you're playing Survivor, you might not know this, but the vault speed build like doesn't look right as killer. Your hitbox goes through the window like 20 times faster than your character model does. So on our screen it looks like we're just hitting an invisible window instead of the person we should be hitting, but in reality like your hitbox has jumped through the plane of existence onto the other side of the vault already. It's really annoying, and I know it's fun as Survivor, so that is obviously not a great thing, but at the same time it was super obnoxious and it didn't fit a stealth perk, especially in a meta that so heavily pushes survivors to shift W. I'm glad to see this change to Spine Chill. My version also got rid of the vault speed, but it also made it to where the perk only like worked while you're injured. Overall, I think Behaviors is simpler and better, so Behavior gets a point on this one. Now we are moving into the non-meta perk changes, and this is going to be interesting because now we might potentially get really trashy perks become new meta perks that change the game entirely. Super curious to see what they do. Non-meta perk changes. With so many meta perks being changed, we wanted to make sure that everyone had something new to look forward to. We've updated 25 additional perks to try out, the majority which fulfill a similar purpose to the meta perks listed above. Killer perk buffs Overcharge. Along with its current effects, Overcharge will cause a kick generator's regression speed to grow from 100% to 400% over the course of 30 seconds. Survivors will want to stop this generator from regressing as soon as possible. That is incredibly strong. Like mixing that with something like Call of Brine, I don't even know how that would work, but not only can the survivor not really tap the generator, but it's going to just be absolutely melting progress. Yeah, that's savage. It's going to be this perk right here. let's say that you're pulling a 3-gen strat and you down somebody somehow and you hook them within your 3-gen strat, like that's disgusting. Like, game over. 3-genning is going to be huge with Overcharge. It already kind of was a 3-genning perk, but now it's like the definition of a 3-genning perk. So enjoy, 3-genners. You are going to borth on us all so savagely. Congratulations. Eruption. Eruption released with fairly safe numbers, but upon reflection we're comfortable with increasing them. We have upped the generator aggression penalty to 10% and the duration of the incapacitated effect to 25 seconds. That's good, because if you ever used Eruption, the survivors were almost always back on the generator and would often finish it before you could even get back to them. So even though in a way it did buy you a little bit of time, it was pretty much non-consequential, which is why everyone just stopped using the perk, basically. It really only has any value on maybe like Nurse or Blight, and yeah, kind of meh. So it's a little bit more of an option now. Really need to test this one out to see how effective it actually is. Knockout. Those of you who like to leave survivors on the ground can have a little bit more peace of mind. In addition to its current effect, Knockout will cause the dying survivors to crawl 50% slower for 15 seconds and reduce their recovery speed by 25%. A nice little minor buff to Knockout. Right now, survivors can pick each other up off the ground so incredibly fast, it's almost mind-blowing how fast they can pick each other up off the ground. So I think that's good if you really want to like go out of your way to like slug somebody, or you just like the perk Knockout for whatever reason, I guess. It's a nice buff to it. I don't know if it'll make anybody like go out of their way to use Knockout in a way that like wouldn't use it anyway, but it's something. Coulrophobia. To make healing in the killer's terror radius even more unappealing, Coulrophobia will now increase the speed of skill checks by 50% on top of its current effect. I think that's not gonna work. I think it's just too minor. Coulrophobia is already one of the most underused perks in the game, and that's not gonna be the thing that makes people like go like, oh, you know what? I think it has a purpose now. This perk needs something general to it. Even if it's minor, it just needs something that you like might get passive value out of, even if you're not going out of your way to get value out of it, right? Like something as simple as the Obsession heals survivors 50% slower. Like something that generic added to this perk would make it significantly stronger and would start opening up maybe different doorways for perk synergy, and then you would see this perk getting used more. But right now it's still way too reliant on this whole killer's terror radius thing, and I just don't see it really working. Nurses is still a better option. Dark Devotion. This perk is great for confusing and sneaking up on survivors, but the basic attack requirement makes it unappealing for certain killers. Dark Devotion will now activate whenever the Obsession loses a health state. And there might be something I'm not thinking of, but for the most part I think this is still going to be like a Legion meme perk. I don't really see any other killer getting too much value out of this over another tryhard perk, so it's like it's a nice change. I mean, I'm not complaining, but yeah, I don't think it's significant enough. The big issue with Dark Devotion is that the timing on it is too short. 30 seconds goes by so incredibly fast when you're trying to do things that only someone like Legion, who can immediately see where the next target is, gets a value out of it. Jolt. Jolt allows the killer to regress generator simply by downing a survivor. To make it more consistent and punish careless survivor plays, we have removed the cooldown. That's pretty savage, a buff to Jolt, not gonna lie. You might be seeing some like small map builds with this, killers putting on small maps, throwing Jolt on, and just constantly blowing up the generators to annoy the hell out of you. Get ready for that, because it's probably gonna happen. Jolt is a perk I honestly never even looked at before. Like, it doesn't matter when it was Surge, doesn't matter. I saw it and meh, stupid. Like, some people have sworn by it and tried to convince me it's a good perk. I've never gotten value out of this perk in my entire life that I couldn't have got out of another perk 10 times better. I think that's a good change to Jolt, and it'll make it more appealing overall. Now, my change to Jolt was a little bit over the top, wherein basically if you were like right next to a survivor and they finished a gen in your face, like right in your face, you know, like screw you, my adrenaline's about to pop anyway, go fudge yourself, the generator would explode, and any survivors who were like within like 2 meters of the generator when it exploded would lose a health state. So it was like a perk that really punished the hell out of you for finishing a generator right in the killer's face. But overall, I think Behavior's version is a little bit more simple. Not to say that my version isn't a cool perk, I mean, let's come on, but I'll give this point to Behavior. Lethal Pursuer. So you like order reading, huh? On top of the existing effect, Lethal Pursuer now extends the duration of all aura reading effects by 2 seconds. Nice. Look, one of the things Lethal Pursuer was missing was that it gave you nothing in the match whatsoever outside of the few seconds at the beginning of the match. And I'll be honest, personally, anytime I'm using Lethal Pursuer, I'm just not in the mood to care about generators. You know what I mean? Like, you just go, you put on all aura reading perks and you just go ham and you don't give a shit about generators. This is an awesome change to Lethal Pursuer, and I'll definitely enjoy using it more often. Scourge, Gift of Pain, the perk that has the coolest name in the entire game. This perk also shipped with safer numbers, so we'll be increasing the action speed penalty to 16%. Nice. I like it. It's simple and makes the perk a little bit more appealing because, yeah, in its current state, it was too pathetic. I like the change overall. I'll probably be using this perk more, so good job. Thanatophobia, and this one I actually thought they were going to nerf because it's one of the more used perks in the game, but they're actually buffing it, which is a bit surprising. They're increasing the action speed penalty to 5.5% per survivor for a maximum of 22%, so it's a small buff, but it's a buff, so kind of meh. I always thought Thanatophobia was one of the more boring perks in the game. Of course, that's personal preference, but my version was when a survivor is within 8 meters of an injured survivor, they constantly hear the killer's terror radius and their skill check success zones are reduced by 40%. Because Thanatophobia is a fear of death, I thought that was kind of like a cool idea. This one is very, very basic in a way, so I'm going to give a point to myself on that one. And for those of you like me who don't really enjoy Thanatophobia, I think it's kind of a boring perk. Well, yeah. Deal with it, I guess. Scourge Hook. Oh, Scourge Hook Monstrous Shrine. Okay. Long have we waited. Monstrous Shrine has received a rework. This perk will now convert all basement hooks to Scourge Hooks. Additionally, Scourge Hooks will now grant 20% faster entity progression, but only if the killer is not within 24 meters. What a great change. Like, there's so many elements to that that make it a great change. Like, one, you are incentivized to hook people in the basement if you can. You're no longer punished for hooking people in the basement, but at the same time, you don't have to hook people in the basement to get value out of Monstrous Shrine. You still get value out of any Scourge Hook on the map, so it's not like you're having to go out of your way to get basement hooks. And then on top of all of that, you get rewarded for not camping. So you hook somebody in the basement, you're incentivized to leave the basement as fast as possible and go provide pressure to somebody else. So a really well thought out change. Good job. My change did something similar in a way, but overall, I think Behavior's change is smarter, and I'm definitely going to give them a point for it. Calm Spirit. In addition to Calm Spirit's current effects, you can now open chests and cleanse and bless totems silently, albeit at 30% reduced speed. Nice. That's kind of what Calm Spirit needed, because Calm Spirit was too situational. You literally almost needed to have Doctor or some very specific killer in order to get any value out of this perk. So it's cool that they put a little bit of a generic value in there too. It'll make the perk get used a lot more often and is overall a good change. Saboteur. All right, I'm a little nervous. After months of studying, saboteurs can now identify Scourge Hooks. Their auras are shown in yellow when a survivor is being carried. Use this information to your advantage to prevent Scourge Hook perks from being activated. I like it. I think at first, my first thought is like, oh god, Saboteur is kind of a toxic perk, right? You use it to just completely bully the killer. But this isn't really toxic. This is strategic. You're not trying to prevent your teammate from being hooked necessarily. You're preventing your teammate from being hooked on a Scourge Hook. They still might get hooked. You just don't want them to get hooked on a Scourge Hook. So it's more strategic now than it is toxic. So I think that's overall a pretty good change. Botany Knowledge. Botany Knowledge now increases healing speed efficiency by 50%, up from 33%. So now Botany Knowledge could be paired with self-care to make self-care still a perk. So that's kind of a cool idea. Overall, I think Botany Knowledge is better now. It was too low before to make me really go and say I want to use it. Now it's a pretty cool perk and has a lot of reason to be used. I don't know the answer to this and I could Google it, but I'd rather ask you guys, does Botany Knowledge work on Mend? Because if this works on Mend as well, that's pretty sweet. And I would definitely give the perk more of a use with the amount of legions I play against. Off the record. Upon being unhooked, gain the endurance status effect for 80 seconds. The endurance effect is lost upon performing a conspicuous action. While this is a lengthy endurance effect, any game progression action will cancel it prematurely, making it purely for evading the killer after being unhooked. Well, that's not necessarily true now, is it? Unfortunately, anytime you have a perk like this, People will go out of their way to use it to bully killers, so I expect a lot of body blocking from people who are using Off the Record and a Swift. But beyond that, if you're just using this perk to not be tunneled, it could potentially be a better anti-tunneling perk than Decisive Strike. No, it is a better anti-tunneling perk than Decisive Strike. Not only does it last longer, but you can't get slugged while using it. So this is a better version of Decisive Strike. It can even be paired with a Decisive Strike for a devastating anti-tunnel combo. My change was something a little bit similar, where you no longer made noise when you were on the ground, so if the killer slugged you and then left you there, you could crawl away and be completely hidden. But, you know, there could be issues with that. So overall, I think Behavior's version is smarter. I do think it's a bit unfortunate that people are going to go out of their way to bully killers with this. It's just going to happen. There's no way around it. But, you know, we'll see how it progresses and if there aren't ways to get around it. Lucky Break. This perk is great for escaping a chase, but the effect quickly runs out. We are giving survivors a way to recharge Lucky Break. Each second spent healing another survivor increases Lucky Break's duration by 1 second. The total time cannot exceed the starting duration. Not a nice little buff there, nice little quality of life change to Lucky Break. Cool. Pharmacy. Pharmacy used to guarantee an emergency medkit the first time you searched a chest, which you'd either hope nobody takes before you need it or hide in a far off corner like a medkit goblin. Now Pharmacy will activate whenever you're injured, guaranteeing an emergency medkit when you search a chest. The effect can happen multiple times in one trial. Good luck stealing my medkit now, Meg. A cool change to Pharmacy, I suppose. What I wonder, does this perk deactivate? Say if you get injured, right? And then you get unhooked and your teammate has will make it and your teammate heals you. Does the perk stay activated for when you go search another chest? Or does it deactivate? Because that would be kind of lame. I would hope that it still would give you at least one guaranteed emergency medkit when you are not injured. It's a cool perk though. It kind of reminds me of Inner Strength in a way. It gives you a way to heal yourself, but makes it to where there's a caveat there as well. So a cool change overall. Hopefully it doesn't have that downside to it that I mentioned. Soul Survivor. In addition to hiding your aura, Soul Survivor will now increase your generator repair speed by 75% and your exit gate and hatch action speed by 50%. These effects are only active when you're the last survivor standing. But yeah, it's cool. I think it does have a purpose, like I said, for solo escape streaks. Outside of solo escape streaks, though, I wouldn't imagine this is going to be used much. The only thing my eyes peel in on is the ability to open exit gates 50% faster. So you could pair this with Remember Me or something and really open the hell out of exit gates so incredibly fast. And then just hope that the killer doesn't have no way out. My version that was a little bit taken from Odstarva, I think was probably cooler, so I'll take the point, but still a good change. I got no issues. Distortion. For those who like to stay hidden, we've added a way to regain distortion tokens. Gain 1 token for every 30 seconds spent within the killer's terror radius. I mean, that's cool. I'll probably be using this perk more often for those annoying archive challenges because I have no idea how long I've been hiding within the killer's terror radius, so a nice little quality of life improvement for Distortion. Lightweight. In addition to Lightweight's existing effects, your scratch marks will now be more sporadic, making you harder to track. Your scratch marks will now also fade 3 seconds sooner, up from 1 second sooner. I'm a little bit confused on what they mean exactly with the timings on how they word this one, but listen, Lightweight was already, in my opinion, kind of an underrated perk, and obviously we have no way of seeing how this plays out, but there is potential in this perk to absolutely ruin the killer's life, like legitimately ruin the killer's life. So I'm a little bit wary of this one. We'll see how it plays out. Déjà-vu. To help survivors power the 3 closest generators, Déjà-vu will now grant a 5% repair speed bonus to the revealed generators. So this is like, they took an anti-3-gen perk and they kind of made it the definitive anti-3-gen perk. So that's fine. A nice little quality of life change. I don't think you'll see this really much outside of like a YouTube video where someone tries to like really push like all these like gen increase perks together to really destroy the killer's life. But yeah, outside of that, probably won't get used much, but for those gen rush builds, yeah, you know, why not? No One Left Behind. Beyond its current effects, No One Left Behind will grant a 7% movement speed bonus to any survivors you unhook. Additionally, the perk now activates when the gates are powered rather than opened. It would be interesting to see how that works with Hope, to see if the survivors just go 1,000 miles an hour. Yeah, I mean, nice little quality of life there. I don't think anyone's going to use this perk still. It just is too situational and kind of bland. Dark Sense. We've changed the way Dark Sense works. When a generator is powered, Dark Sense activates. The next time the killer comes within 24 meters of you, their aura is revealed for 10 seconds, Dark Sense then deactivates. It sounds like this perk only works for you one time in a trial. If that's the case, I think that it might be too weak. It's a good like stealth perk, but it's not incredibly needed to loop the killer. So yeah, if it activates only one time per trial, I think this thing will fade back into the darkness very quickly. Tenacity, a perk that I didn't really think needed changing, but we'll see what they did. In addition to the current effects, Tenacity now reduces your grunts of pain by 75% when in the dying state. Combined with the increased crawling speed, this perk will now be much more effective in crawling away from the killer. This is a little bit of my like off the record change, but yeah, I mean, it's in there. It's a nice little quality of life change to Tenacity, so fine by me. Hope is already kind of good, so Hope is great for those who like to make late game saves. But the limited duration can cause it to expire at an inconvenient time. Since the perk is only useful at the end of the match, we've removed the duration entirely. Well guys, isn't NOED only useful at the end of the match? Shouldn't you have made it like a boon or something that the killer can see after 30 seconds and then go step on it? I don't know. That might be really annoying. Like, that might be like more annoying than adrenaline. Because like a survivor with hope is insanely difficult to catch. I mean, yeah, you could see that the survivor has hope and then break off and go chase another survivor. And I personally don't really care that much because like I don't like the end game anyway. So if a survivor's using hope, it's like, oh wow, you beat me even more than you already did. Like, you know, congratulations. So I don't care that much, but still slightly questionable. My advice is that if you're going up against like a really savage bully swift and you kind of feel that they have hope, just open the exit gate when the match is over, you know, get that timer counting down, save yourself some pain. Overzealous. In its current state, cleansing a totem grants you a repair speed bonus of 8%. Now that bonus doubles if you cleanse a hex totem. Wow, that's really strong. I already kind of like Overzealous. I've been using it since I got it. And seeing that it has this effect now means that I'm going to probably continue to use it. It's a really good solo queue perk, but I imagine it's a good perk in Swift as well. Some killers are going to cringe at that change, for sure. They're going to... You're already very protective of your hex totems, you know, and wary of them. If Ruin wasn't dead before, guys, like I said Ruin was dead before, Ruin is buried now. There is absolutely no reason to ever run Ruin again. It is such a dead perk. Like, honestly, it's dead. Goodbye. We're gonna live forever. Much like BBQ and Chili, this perk features a massive blood point bonus. We do not want blood points to dictate which perks are used, so we have removed the bonus blood points from We're Gonna Live Forever. This change will release at the same time as the progression overall, which is expected to cut the grind by about 75%, with matchmaking incentives providing additional avenue for blood points. So We're Gonna Live Forever is now no longer needed to be used, which is good because sometimes it could get a little bit toxic with survivors competing for stacks. And now you have a better reason to use Overzealous and rush the hell out of generators. So We're Gonna Live Forever is really an anti-slugging perk now. We realize that following these changes, a new meta will surely rise. We'll be closely monitoring the performance of each updated perk to ensure that none fall too far out of line. Moving forward, we hope to make meta-shaking updates like this one a more frequent part of our plans in order to keep gameplay feeling fresh. I like it. With that, we've reached the end of this edition of the developer update. Kudos to those of you who made it this far. It was a long one. As always, these changes will be available for testing next week in the PTB. Given the number of changes made, we'll be keeping an extra close eye out for feedback. We'll also be holding a live stream in the near future to preview the update and answer any questions you may have. Until next time, the Dead by Daylight team. So ultimately, we have to ask the question, did they succeed with the goal of making meta perks less necessary? Overall, I'd say not really. My honest opinion, I think that a lot of the most used meta perks now are just as powerful as they were before, with just slight minor changes. I think Hex Ruin took the brunt of the force when overall it was already kind of on the way out as it is because it gets cleansed so fast. But yeah, survivors are still going to use Dead Hard. I think that you'll see more off the records instead of Decisive Strikes now. So get ready for that. As killer, I'm still going to be running Corrupt Intervention 100%. Still going to be running Pop Goes the Weasel. Still going to be running Pain Resonance. Thanatophobia got a buff. Gift of Pain is stronger now and more alluring. Probably going to use that one as well. In the grand scheme of things, do I think that one side is stronger than the other side now? No. I'd say that overall, I think that the most used meta perks now are just as powerful as they were before, but just slight minor changes. I think Hex Ruin took the brunt of the force when overall it was already kind of on the way out as it is because it gets cleansed so fast. But yeah, survivors are still going to use Dead Hard. I think that you'll see more off the records instead of Decisive Strikes now. So get ready for that. As killer, I'm still going to be running Corrupt Intervention 100%. Still going to be running Pop Goes the Weasel. Still going to be running Pain Resonance. Thanatophobia got a buff. Gift of Pain is stronger now and more alluring. Probably going to use that one as well. In the grand scheme of things, do I think that one side is stronger than the other side now? No. I'd say that Killer probably comes out a little bit more on top. Tunneling got hurt quite a bit in this update, so tunneling is going to be harder to do 100%. Off the Record is a real true anti-tunneling perk, but at the same time, camping is going to become more alluring. And with that said, make sure to tune into our camping tournament that we're currently doing, and we'll find out who the best camper is so that you're ready to go for when this update drops. But that about sums it up, guys. A lot of this stuff just has to be tested. I'm not like overly disappointed or overly hyped really about too many different things, but overall it's healthy. Like, it is a healthy change for the game, literally no matter what, because even if the meta perks didn't get completely shredded, a lot of these like weaker perks got brought up, which just makes things more interesting. So I'm hyped for that, and I'm curious to test out a lot of this stuff over the next few months. But that wraps it up. Let me know what you guys think, and of course, thanks for watching, and have a good one.